Hi everyone. Today, Stephen Slate announced his new virtual recording studio, his virtual recording system, and it's something that I want to talk about because it's something I'm very excited about. It's going to be an 8-channel interface, which is something that people have been asking for quite a while. And it's got 8 channels of his virtual microphone system preamps in, which is crazy. They're all ultra linear, which means they don't sound like any preamp we've ever seen before. They just have a very, very neutral character. But what that means is you can use the Slate VM-1, the virtual microphone, I think it's the VM-1, and use any of the large diaphragm mic emulations that they've got. Or you can use their new VM-2, which was announced, which I've seen before, but only a couple of years ago, and they've finally released it, which is their small diaphragm condenser, which again they've remodeled to be incredibly linear, which means they don't sound like anything. You can also use any other regular microphone with it as well, but you just don't have to put then the virtual mic emulation on. It just means that you've got choices, and that's the way that if I do it, and hopefully I will, that's the way I'll be doing it, is try and get as many of those VM1 and VM2 mics as possible, because it gives you an extra choice. You can make the VM2 sound like dynamics, ribbons, small diaphragms, some large diaphragms, and that's pretty powerful. You can even multi-track, so you have one of these VM2 microphones on, say, a snare, and you can run the same thing as like a small diaphragm condenser and an SM57, and they'll be perfectly phase coincident, perfectly phase aligned, as if you had 2 mics on the same snare. So that saves me a channel and saves me the headache of phase alignment. Pretty useful. So it's going to be incredibly low latency. He said at 96k, the round trip latency, not just the input or the output, the round trip is going to be 0.7 milliseconds. So they've completely redone all the hardware that they're going to do it, and that's insane. So to get that latency, for Mac, it's going to be Thunderbolt, which is great if you've got any kind of new Mac. And what you can do is if you get 2 or 3 or 4, or I think he said up to 6 of these, they'll daisy chain through Thunderbolt, so you can have up to 48 Slate channels in and 48 out, which is a lot for one single Thunderbolt connection. And they mentioned PC as well. They've got a PCIe connector which would go inside a PC, which is what I'm doing with RME right now. And that connects with an HDMI cable. Not with HDMI video, but just using that cable straight to the Slate interface, which means you can get that crazy kind of low latency. Now, people have been asking questions. One of the things was, what about if I have a PC that has Thunderbolt? Right now, there are no drivers for it, because unfortunately, Thunderbolt on PC is a bit like the Wild West right now, that drivers, there are different chipsets, there are different drivers, whereas with Mac, there is one driver because there's one chipset, and that just is verifiable. If it's an Apple machine, it has this type of chip, it's going to work. But they said that that's going to happen hopefully in the future, is Windows Thunderbolt drivers. And the other way around, the PCIe card, a lot of people have been asking, is that going to work in the older Mac Pro towers that don't have Thunderbolt? And Stephen Slate has said, yes, that's going to work. They're going to make drivers for that very soon. So when's this system going to be out? It's going to be out, Stephen Slate has said it's going to be out in Q2 of this year, which compared to some of the things where they've said soon, and it's going to be like, it turns out to be months, years down the line. FG stress. So yeah, it's going to be, as they hope and project, out this year before the end of June. And the pricing is not unreasonable. It sounds like a lot, but the interface they said was $2,000. Which, 1999 they said, which sounds like a lot, but at that level, think how much a UAD Apollo costs. They're something like $3,000 or $4,000. They're a lot more. But what he said is because you don't need all those VMS preamps, that takes a lot of the cost out in terms of making the microphones. So the the Virtual Mic 2, the small diaphragms, were going to be sold at $149 each, which is really quite cheap for what they are. But you can get 5 of them with the interface for an extra $500. So that's $24.99, which is starting to sound more like a bargain. And they said you can also add the large diaphragm ones for another $500 each rather than the $1,000 that they currently cost. So you can stack as many of those on as you reasonably want. So for $3,000, you can have a large diaphragm condenser that's like any tube mic in history, 5 of the small diaphragm condensers that can sound like ribbons, sound like small diaphragm condensers, large diaphragm, or dynamics, and you'll have a blazing fast interface with very little, if any, processor overhead. And it even comes with the virtual mix rack and the everything bundle, included free for a year. That's insane! So, I mean, I already pay for the everything bundle and I'm happy to, but the fact that they would just want to say, hey, if you don't already have the everything bundle, have it on us to show that it works with our system. Great. And the virtual mic preamps come with a permanent license, so that as long as you own that hardware, those mics will sound how you always wanted them to, and that just won't expire. Now that sounds like a bargain compared to the UAD stuff, which I used over a decade ago, and at the time was really powerful, but the emulations have got more and more complex, so they're eating up more and more processing power. The plugins are expensive, the hardware's expensive, and you can't take it on the road with you unless you take one of these UAD satellite bricks with you. Native has taken over. So the lunatics are taking over the asylum, and even though it sounds like madness with the Stephen Slate stuff, it's going to change the industry, and I'm going to try my best to be on that forefront. So stick around, and probably around June I'll have tried to save every penny and hold my breath and just live on beans and noodles so I can afford this interface, and we'll show you when that comes out how that sounds. Hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us. And consider looking at our Patreon. Buy us a beer because it's really going to help us. Thanks a lot for watching. See you soon.